Nero, Rome's infamous tyrant. Perhaps no emperor is more synonymous with corruption and excess than Nero, who ruled the Roman Empire from 54 to 68 CE. Nero's reign began under the guidance of capable advisors, but once he took control, it quickly spiraled into scandal. Nero was notorious for his obsession with luxury and entertainment. He spent enormous sums on lavish palaces, extravagant feasts, and artistic performances in which he insisted on starring. According to ancient sources, he forced senators and citizens to sit through his endless recitals of poetry and music. But Nero's corruption went far beyond vanity. When the Great Fire of Rome devastated the city in 64 CE, rumors spread that Nero had deliberately started it to clear land for his new palace, the Domus Aurea, a sprawling complex of gold and marble. Whether or not he set the fire, his decision to seize prime urban land for personal use outraged the population. Nero also abused his power to eliminate rivals, ordering the deaths of his mother Agrippina, his first wife Octavia, and many senators. His misrule sparked widespread rebellions, and in 68 CE, abandoned by the Senate and the army, Nero committed suicide. His legacy became a cautionary tale of how imperial corruption could consume both ruler and empire. Commodus, the gladiator emperor. Another Roman emperor, Commodus, ruled from 180 to 192 CE and is remembered as one of the most corrupt and incompetent rulers in Roman history. The son of the philosopher emperor Marcus Aurelius, Commodus inherited one of the strongest empires in the ancient world, yet he squandered this legacy in just over a decade. Commodus was obsessed with gladiatorial combat. Unlike other emperors who merely sponsored games, Commodus insisted on fighting in the arena himself, dressing as Hercules and demanding that spectators worship him as a living god. To finance his indulgences, he drained the treasury, imposed heavy taxes, and sold government offices to the highest bidder. His corruption also manifested in paranoia and cruelty. He executed senators, confiscated property, and ruled through a series of corrupt favorites and mistresses. Eventually, his behavior became so intolerable that members of his own court conspired to assassinate him in 192 CE. His death plunged Rome into civil war, showing how one corrupt emperor could destabilize an entire empire. Caligula, madness and extravagance. Few emperors embodied the dangers of absolute power like Caligula, who ruled Rome from 37 to 41 CE. Initially popular for ending unpopular policies and granting bonuses to the army, Caligula's reign quickly descended into chaos. Caligula treated the empire as his personal playground. He drained the treasury on extravagant games and spectacle, built luxurious palaces, and commissioned ships covered in jewels and gold. Ancient accounts describe bizarre acts of excess, from feasting on delicacies like pearls dissolved in vinegar to building a floating bridge just so he could ride his horse across the sea. He also displayed shocking cruelty. Caligula executed nobles without trial, humiliated senators, and even declared himself a living god, demanding worship across the empire. His corruption wasn't limited to greed, it was also moral and political, destroying the dignity of Rome's institutions. After just 4 years, his bodyguard and political rivals had had enough. He was assassinated in 41 CE, leaving behind a legacy as one of Rome's most infamous rulers. Elagabalus, the scandalous teen emperor. If Caligula and Nero were notorious for excess, Elagabalus took it to another level. Crowned emperor at just 14 years old in 218 CE, Elagabalus shocked Roman society with his unorthodox behavior and scandalous lifestyle. As high priest of a Syrian sun god, he attempted to replace traditional Roman religion with his own cult, alienating the Senate and people. He also flaunted wealth, hosting banquets where guests were buried under flower petals or served dishes made of exotic animal. Elagabalus was accused of bizarre personal indulgences, including offering vast sums of money to physicians who could surgically alter his body, an unusual detail that continues to fascinate historians. While some ancient accounts may exaggerate, there is no doubt that he squandered imperial resources and abandoned governance for self-indulgence. His grandmother and mother, who had orchestrated his rise, eventually realized he was unfit to rule. In 222 CE, the Praetorian Guard assassinated him, ending one of the most corrupt and eccentric reigns in Roman history. Emperor Yang of Sui, China's extravagant despot. Corruption wasn't unique to Rome. In China, Emperor Yang of the Sui dynasty, r. 604 to 618 CE, is remembered as one of the most corrupt and self-indulgent rulers in Chinese history. Yang inherited a strong empire, but he drained its resources on grandiose projects. He forced millions of peasants into labor to construct the Grand Canal, rebuild palaces, and launch failed military campaigns against Korea. While the canal later became an important trade route, at the time, the human cost was immense. Tens of thousands died during construction. Meanwhile, Emperor Yang lived in luxury, surrounding himself with concubines and holding lavish feasts while his people starved. His wasteful spending and oppressive taxation led to widespread rebellions. By 618, the empire was in chaos, and Yang was assassinated by his own generals. His reign epitomized how corruption at the top could collapse an entire dynasty. Emperor Tiberius, the retreat to Capri. Although not as flamboyant as Nero or Caligula, Tiberius, or 14 to 37 CE, Rome's second emperor, is remembered for a different kind of corruption, moral decay, and neglect. In his later years, Tiberius withdrew from Rome to the island of Capri, leaving governance in the hands of corrupt favorites like Sejanus. On Capri, he indulged in debauchery, according to lurid accounts from Roman historians. Meanwhile, his absence allowed a climate of fear and political purges in Rome. Sejanus manipulated trials to eliminate rivals and enrich himself, while Tiberius turned a blind eye. The empire continued to function, but under a cloud of corruption and mistrust that stained Tiberius's legacy. This case shows another form of corruption, not reckless extravagance, but abdication of responsibility, leaving the empire vulnerable to exploitation by unscrupulous subordinates. Other notable corrupt emperors. History is full of emperors whose corruption left deep scars. In the Byzantine Empire, Emperor Justinian I mutilated and executed rivals, ruling through terror until he was finally overthrown. In India, Muhammad bin Tughlaq of the Delhi Sultanate squandered resources on failed experiments, like moving the capital city, leaving the economy in chaos. In more recent times, monarchs styled as emperors, from Haiti's Faustin I to Central Africa's Jean Bédel Bokassa, also ruled through extravagance, corruption, and violence, proving that the temptations of absolute power never really fade. The consequences of corruption. What unites all of these rulers is not just their personal failings, but the consequences of their corruption. Their actions weakened empires, drained treasuries, alienated subjects, and in many cases, led directly to rebellion, assassination, or collapse. Corruption in emperors was rarely just a private vice, it was a public disaster. For subjects, corruption meant crushing taxes, forced labor, or arbitrary executions. For empires, it meant instability, loss of trust, and vulnerability to enemies. And for the emperors themselves, corruption almost always led to downfall. Whether assassinated by guards, betrayed by generals, or driven to suicide, most of history's most corrupt emperors met violent ends.